language and conversations revolving around situations not suitable for immature audiences. Spoilers and general political incorrectness can often be expected, so listener discretion is advised.
They must be destroyed on sight!
All right, welcome to the Must Be Destroyed on Sight, a movie podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel Harper. How are you doing, sir?
Doing pretty well. Hanging out, drinking some beers, petting cat,
Paying on YouTube for shitty old horror movies?
Yeah, no, I did end up having to, I didn't have to. I was lazy enough that spending $2 was less effort than spending another 5 minutes looking for the movie. So I guess, you know what my time is worth now.
So we're doing our slasher movie month, and we're getting off to a great start here because plans got fucked up, so Paul is not quite joining us tonight.
Are you saying we're getting split up?
We're getting split up.
We're getting split up.
Yeah,
and, we might get stalked by some person with an axe or a knife.
Yeah, we're doing the exact wrong thing to do. Yeah. We're splitting up. But yeah, things got a little messed up. Hope to record with Paul tomorrow and either join the two segments together, or you'll never ever hear this and know that this happened, and you'll hear us all together recording a show. So either way, whatever's going to happen. But we decided to pick horror movies that are sort of specific to the 80s. First, we were going to do a summer camp slasher kind of series, but the logistics of it were kind of troublesome because it was like, well, Daniel would have to pay for about half the movies we're going to pick on this list. So I tried desperately to find stuff that was free on YouTube for him. That didn't work out as well either, but whatever. But and we also tried to pick stuff that was not necessarily top-of-the-line, well-known slasher movies, like more like, I guess, maybe B-level slasher movies to a degree. A lot of them are cult classics, but they're not generally known by the public. You know, they're not pop culture slasher films, I guess, is the best way to put it. Before we get into those, we have no questions or comments this week, so bad viewers, bad listeners, poo-poo on you.
You're terrible people for not sending us comments, really.
Exactly.
We shit on our audience. That's what we do here on this podcast.
We hate you all.
Because we do so much work to put this podcast out every week.
I mean, our livelihoods depend on this shit, damn it.
No.
I mean, Daniel's just telling me how poor he was earlier. I mean, I haven't been able to pay him for weeks now. It's terrible.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Where's my $2,000 check for this podcast?
Yeah.
You know what they call podcasting a zero-sum game? Because nobody makes any money off it. Unless you're at This American Life.
Yeah, unless you're like Kevin Smith or somebody.
Martin Aaron or Kevin Smith, yeah.
And even then, Kevin Smith has to tour around with Hollywood Babylon to make us some extra scratch. First, we're going to get into something we were talking about last week. Daniel suggested that you could come up with a list of stuff surrounding artificial intelligence in both written form and movie form. We were talking about Computer Chess last week, which was a movie about artificial intelligence, so that's what sort of sparked the idea. And I was like, yeah, go ahead, Daniel, make up a list. So I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Sure. First, and again, a little bit of spoilers here for Computer Chess, because I did, after we stopped recording, I kind of thought about possible alternate interpretations of Computer Chess. And one of the obvious ones that we didn't really consider, or we didn't really talk about, was simply that the main character, that he's essentially just losing his grip with reality. And that much of, the computer isn't really only wanting to play with human beings, and, the rest of the stuff isn't really happening. He's just cracking under the stress of this competition and being a computer genius, a grad student or some whatever, which I think is also a very plausible interpretation of at least his section of the film.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's actually that's a good point, because most of the movie's spent with, when he's in it, he's sort of talking to his mentor or whatever, the sort of team leader or whatever comes in to check on them and their computer, and he's
the kind of high up, the verified name in the artificial intelligence field and this computer chess field, and he's talking to him, and the guy has a really good point of like, you don't have enough data to even begin to justify what you're telling me. There is that kind of extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence kind of thing, and it's like, well, look, ultimately, I need you to, if you want to prove this to me, I need to know more, and so you can interpret that as like he's just being reasonable, or you can interpret it as, I don't know, it's kind of one of those. I just thought I'd mention it because I realized I didn't say it on the show last week. The other thing that I was going to do was I said I'd put together, and maybe this is just going to be my segment from now on, is based on the conversation we have, I put together a list of things that I think are interesting based on that. Because I actually did have some fun kind of putting together this list. Not that it's a comprehensive list, but some stuff that I've read that's kind of based around artificial intelligence, and some movies that I would recommend to people who are interested in kind of mathematics, or we'll get into that here shortly. There's a lot of treatment in science fiction of AI and kind of what that means, and probably the best place to start is Asimov's I, Robot. This is a short story collection published in, I believe, 49, sometime around there, 49, 50, 51. But it's a series of short stories that were all published in the early 40s. Asimov is very well known for his three laws of robotics, but a lot of people don't realize that he went a lot further than that a lot of the stories they start out as kind of logical puzzles of, how do you work out the details of how these laws would work. But then he eventually gets into kind of bigger questions of what does it mean to be intelligent? What does it mean to be a created being? And I think iRobot is he wrote a bunch of robot stuff over his career. I mean, in particular, any of his stuff is great, but starting with that, if you're at all interested in kind of science fictional treatments of, kind of what artificial intelligence would mean, Asimov is a great place to start. He's a golden age science fiction writer, so that means everything that you might think it means from style, and there's just kind of there's not a lot of plot. These are basically idea stories. Definitely a great place to start. Another book published in the late 70s, which would have been very much on the mind of our characters in Computer Chess. I guarantee you that every character in that movie, if they were a real person, would have read this, or at least been familiar with it. Is a book called Gödel Escher Bach, An Eternal Golden Braid. This is written by a man named Douglas Hofstadter, who's still around. He is a philosophy of mind kind of guy. He did a lot of work in computers starting in the early 70s and kind of working on formal logic, symbolic logic systems. This starts out as this kind of very lighthearted, fun look at what are called closed-loop systems that can learn to recognize themselves, and kind of a dance through art and music and science and computing and that sort of thing. And towards the end, it becomes this very dense book of symbolic logic, essentially. And whole chapters are basically deriving theorems in this kind of arcane prepositional calculus. So most people do not get all the way through the book unless you are a mathematician or a computer scientist. But it's something I read in high school, and I think it would be really enjoyable if the ideas of computer chess, if you want to get a really kind of deep look at what those characters might have been under. Another book that's probably a little bit more enjoyable and gives you a kind of a bird's eye view of the stuff is a book called The Mind's Eye, and that's I with the letter I, like the ego, not an eye like, an eyeball. This one is a collection of essays with commentary by, again, Douglas Hofstadter, the same guy who wrote Gödel Escher Bach, and Daniel Dennett, who kind of got to be known a few years ago as one of the kind of lesser-known new atheist people. I should note that both Hofstadter and Dennett have written more recent books that have been a little more controversial than these, because they're kind of stuck in kind of old ideas about what, the philosophy of mind field has moved on from where it was in 1982 or whatever. But The Mind's Eye collects a lot of the old science fiction stories and then puts commentary on it from a philosophy of mind point of view. Ends up with a kind of detailed treatise on Searle's Chinese room hypothesis of artificial intelligence, which you don't have to know what that is, but it is kind of the one major argument against the idea that computers could ever learn to think. And I think Dennett and Hofstadter just completely demolish it in this book. And this one is much more pointed at lay people, and it is a very kind of introductory look at that. So those are my three books that I would recommend if you were looking to kind of get a general idea. And again, I'm not an artificial intelligence researcher. I don't know what the cutting edge of the field is. There are a lot of great resources out there if you're interested in that. I have enough of a knowledge of it to know that I don't really know anything about it. Let's put it that way. And then I've got three movies for you, two of which I've actually mentioned on this podcast before, but one is Pi, Darren Aronofsky's first film, which I assume you've seen.
Yeah.
This one is a little bit more about kind of math and how the world relates to mathematics and that sort of thing. kind of descent into madness, but it does again portray that kind of mindset of what these characters would be in. And when I started thinking about that, that was when I started to think like maybe the guy in Computer Chess is just going nuts, you know?
Yeah.
And the other two are more recent. Ex Machina, which I think should be out on DVD pretty soon, which is a recent film about this guy working on, true artificial intelligence. And another film, the Spike Jonze film from a couple of years ago, Her, which I know you haven't seen. I've recommended to you like 3 times. You don't have to watch it, but it is, I think it has really interesting implications for these kind of artificial intelligence.
Is that on Netflix
yet? I don't think it's streaming yet. If it was, I probably would have found it already and watched it again.
I don't remember coming across it on Netflix. Or
I think that would have been a little big enough that you would have seen it happen if it was going to happen. So, but yeah, when that one shows up on streaming service somewhere, I think we're going to have to discuss that one because I think that one is. I could almost go through that one scene by scene and talk about some of the deeper levels of meaning to that. But it is a really good film, and it does kind of, again, present some of these ideas in an accessible way, I think. Yeah, that was my long treatise on stuff that most of our listeners probably don't care about, but enjoy if you are so inclined. Come for the slasher movie discussion and with talk about higher level mathematics.
So we've already deflated all the slasher boners. But awesome. Is there anything you watched this week that...
I did. I actually saw The Third Man on the big screen.
Oh, did you? Nice.
The Alamo was showing it us their Sunday matinee. I had seen it a couple of times before on DVD. Shayna, my wife, she didn't know the movie at all. She said, I'll go with you, fine. I was like, no, we have to go. This is a requirement. If The Third Man plays on a big screen within 10 miles of you, you go see it. It doesn't. That's just it. That's just, in my opinion, that's what happens. So we did, and she really enjoyed it as well. I mean, I think she was definitely. I think a lot of our listeners will have seen the film already, but it's one of those like classic noir pictures, kind of late period noir. Tons of brilliant black and white photography, phenomenal performances all around. Joseph Cotten, Orson Welles. Yeah,
one of the best film entrances ever for a character when Orson Welles shows up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is, like, by the time he shows up in the movie, you've almost forgotten he's in the movie. Mm-hmm. One of the things that Shayna mentioned because I just I told her the general idea of it and just said, okay, we're going to go see it. She said, it's funnier than I thought it was going to be. And there is a very kind of mordant, but very strong sense of humor in the film. And I think that's something that gets overlooked sometimes when people talk about it. But
there's a European-American culture clash in the film that sort of... Right. Brings on the comedy a bit, yeah.
Well, and there's some of that slapsticky, like the cockatoo that bites his finger, and that sort of thing. There's a little bit of that kind of stuff in the bits with the Literature Appreciation Society that think he's a great author, and then it turns out, no, I write westerns, Yeah. So I like to think because Graham Greene wrote the screenplay for that, and then I didn't realize that he wrote the novella afterwards.
Yeah,
based on the movie. So, and I'm sure Graham Greene knew those kind of audiences very well. I think he was poking fun at his own subculture a little bit there. But that's a phenomenal film. And if you have the chance, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely see it. And if you haven't seen it on the big screen, you should do that too if you have the opportunity. So, yeah, that's all I got. I watched some documentaries, but nobody wants to hear me talk anymore about frontline documentaries. So, yeah.
I only watched 2 things really of note this week. First one was Pierce Brosnan's The November Man from 2014, which was just his latest attempt to recapture some of his James Bond glory. You think he'd be trying to escape the typecasting a bit, but I guess this is a project he's had in the works before he was even out of the Bond series. From what I've read, it's not bad, but it's very pedestrian kind of spy film that feels maybe like 10 years out of date at this point. Like it just feels like it's trying to play catch up with the Bourne series. Well acted, but just very pretty much by the numbers plot. But I kind of enjoyed it. I kind of thought Pierce Brosnan had sort of gotten over this sort of thing though after The Matador. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. Yeah,
I am not familiar with Pierce Brosnan's post Tomorrow Never Dies career really. War Zone Enough, that was the last one. Pretty much he left Bond, and then it's not so much. Die Another Day, that was the last one. That's right.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was Halle Berry one.
Oh, yeah, I never watched that
one. Yeah, I actually saw that with my dad in the theater. That was one of those things. I went down to visit that summer or that Christmas or whatever, and my dad and I saw it because he, kind of loved the old James Bond stuff. So, but I didn't grow up with it. So, but yeah, no, Pierce Brosnan. I mean, I think he gets a little slagged off on, as Bond. I don't think he was a terrible Bond. I think he was, I don't know. I kind of these days, I kind of more think of him as the guy from A Hot Fuzz. That's probably what I connect him with.
Yeah. No, he's an excellent actor. The last couple Bond films, like actually, pretty much after Goldfinger, the first one, or not Goldeneye.
Goldeneye. Yeah.
Pretty much after Goldeneye, I think most of the scripts for the next ones they weren't that good. They were just relying more on special effects and shit than anything else. And
well, that's the Broccoli family, So
yeah, but So November Man's worth seeing if you catch it on Netflix or whatever. But it's it's not something to go the way for. But one everyone should fucking see, as far as I'm concerned, is called Lost Soul: The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau.
I read an article about this like the day before yesterday. So yes, please continue. It sounds fascinating.
It is absolutely fantastic. It's one of the best documentaries on a movie I've ever seen, mainly because it is just so fair and well balanced. Like a lot of the times you see documentaries about movies that were essentially, this is about a movie that was never made. I mean, if people don't know Richard Stanley, who did Dust Devil and Hardware, two sort of more indie-ish genre films that got him really noticed by the big studios, and so they gave him Dr. Moreau. It was like, hey, we have Dr. Moreau under development, New Line Cinema. So, like, we'll throw some money at you. He said he could do it for cheap. He could do it for, like, $8 million or something like that. Like, all right, we'll give it to you. You write the script and whatever and get it all done. Start the production. And the problem is that Richard Stanley, not only is he an auteur, he is certifiably fucking crazy. Like, the guy's nuts. And he's just too nuts for the studio system, and they wanted to put more control on him. They started bringing in more stars. They brought in Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando, which upped the budget by like 2 or 3 times the original amount. Brando and Kilmer were just fucking monsters on the set. Like this was at the height of Kilmer's fame, where he thought he was top shit apparently, and he was just bullying people around. Marlon Brando was just actively sabotaging the entire film on purpose. This was around the time when I think his daughter died, and he was having all kinds of other family problems and stuff like that. So he wanted to rewrite the script and shut the production down and stuff like that. So Stanley got fired, and they brought in John Frankenheimer to basically redo the entire film, reshoot the entire film. And that's what you got in 1995 it was, I think, that the movie came out. Yeah. And that movie really sucks. Like, it's not that good.
I've actually not seen it, but it was not highly recommended.
No, it's just really weird, but not in a good way.
Yeah.
You see Stanley's.
There's a train wreck element. It was kind of what I've always gotten the impression of.
Yeah, you see Stanley's concept designs, and man, there's no way that movie would have been made, because the stuff he wanted to do was just so weird, but at the same time so really interesting. Like, it would have been one of the most interesting movies, I think, if he had managed to actually put his vision on the screen instead of having the studios basically push him around and bully him around. It's fucking great. Just go watch it. See all the horror stories of how the studio interferes with a movie. It was just really funny to me. Like, it wasn't the fact that Stanley is this like guy who's obsessed with spaghetti Western imagery, and he thinks he's like a shaman, and he believes in witchcraft, and he had like a warlock cast a spell on the production of the set and everything like that. That's not what weirded out some of the people in New Line. What weirded out one of the guys in New Line was that he came into their first meeting and he ordered, when everyone was taking coffee orders, he ordered a black coffee with 4 sugars. Apparently that was too fucking out there for this guy in New Line. Like, I knew there was something wrong with this guy. Like, wow, these people are just so fucking out of touch. It's unbelievable. But
whenever you hear stories, especially in the 90s, I feel like there are so many stories in the 90s of studio executives who just had no idea what was going on. Yeah. I mean, and filmmakers who, quite frankly, I mean, were, just given full reign sometimes and made crazy shit that maybe you should have reined them in a little bit. I mean, I'm not one to say that, every filmmaker is a born artist who should be left completely alone.
Well, there's
the studios exist for a reason, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there is a good example of New Line doing the same stuff and actually making the movie better, and that would be American History X, where the original director wanted to really fuck around with the story, and the ending
Tony
was
Kaye.
Yeah, the story was totally different. Apparently had Edward Furlong in his ear, like, giving him suggestions and stuff, and I'm like, really? You're going to listen to Edward Furlong about anything? But yeah,
except how to say "hasta la vista, baby." You know, that's it. That's the only thing.
But yeah, it was just bizarre, and I mean, I guess I'd like to say the joke's on New Line because, you know, they eventually somehow went bankrupt after releasing the Lord of the Rings trilogy and making billions of dollars. Somehow they went bankrupt after that. But, you know, Richard Stanley was the weirdo that you had to kick off your set and get someone else to do the movie, right?
There was this very brief period where New Line was like, for me, New Line was what that studio was like the great studio for me because they had P.T. Anderson was making films with them. Mm-hmm. Two of his best films, I think, or at least two of his early films were made at New Line. And I mean, that was when they were giving people like creative control over this stuff to be like, look, you know, I think they learned some lessons. I think the real issue was once they both spent and then made all that money, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, they kind of didn't know where to go from there. Because they were always this like little tiny like schlocky film studio, and then they made billions of dollars, and they started putting like the massive marketing budget that they had for the marketing campaigns that they had for the Lord of the Rings pictures. The very next big movie they put out was Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Yeah, and I remember they had ads that were like it felt like a Lord of the Rings style event for like Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. And, you know, that's when you know nobody knows what the fuck they're doing over there right now. Mm-hmm. They're just high on their own supply at this point. So I suspect that had a lot to do with it. Was, you know, like lottery winners that don't know how to budget their money and don't know how to, and so they just spend it all and then they're broke, you know, 2 years later. It's like, well, I mean, it happens. I mean, it really does. I mean, anyway, sorry.
And the sad thing is Richard Stanley essentially doesn't have a career anymore. He essentially got blacklisted out of Hollywood after getting kicked off that. I'm not saying Richard Stanley was a superb, great visionary like the next fucking Werner Herzog or something like that, you know. But he's like Hardware and Dust Devil. They're both on Netflix right now if people are interested in checking those out. And those are both really good genre films. And definitely check out this documentary if you have any interest in sort of the behind the scenes stuff in filmmaking and stories about what goes on actual film sets. This is it's pretty much the best film I've seen about that sort of thing, I think.
Have you seen Jodorowsky's Dune yet?
Yeah, I have. I actually I wanted to bring that up as a sort of a counterpoint to this, in that I'm saying how this one is much more fair and balanced in a way because it's not idolizing the what may have been. It's not saying, oh, if Richard Stanley had made this film, it would have been the greatest fucking film ever. Because in Jodorowsky's Dune, there's a lot of that. Like, there's a lot of, oh, this would have been the most amazing fucking movie ever, you know? Like, you don't really know that. Okay, right. It definitely probably would have been better than what they ended up with, but, right. You know.
Yes, I agree.
All right. So, yeah, check those out. And I guess we'll get right into the movies here.
Many strange things happen around here.
There is a tale.
It was a night like tonight, many years ago.
There is a legend.
If you say his name above a whisper, he'll get you.
There is a warning.
On certain nights, when the moon is full, he's out there stalking in the woods.
There is a madman.
His name is Mars. Madman. Mars.
Mars! Madman Mars! Here we are! Come and get us, Madman!
Don't you realize you're fooling with things beyond your control?
Madman, there is no escape.
And we're going to start off. Yeah, we're going to start off our slasher series, and we're going to start with 1982's Madman, directed by Joe Gione. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly or not. Also written by him and Gary Sales, starring Galen Ross, who people might remember from Dawn of the Dead as Fran, although she goes under the name Alexis Dubin in this film, or at least she originally did. But we have Tony Fish as TP, which probably stands for toilet paper. I don't recall in the film, but Harriet Bass as Stacy, Seth Jones as Dave, Jan Clare as Ellie, Alexander Murphy Jr. as Bill, Tom Candela as Richie, Frederick Newman as Max, and Michael Sullivan as Dippy, and Paul Ehlers as Madman Mars. This is a movie that was originally based around sort of telling a story based around the Cropsey legend. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, Daniel. Are you?
I'm not. No.
I guess in New York State, there's this sort of urban legend that sort of has developed over basically the later half of the last century. Cropsey, it used to be just a name that you heard once in a while spread around as something parents used to scare kids, right? Just sort of an urban legend kind of thing. But it eventually kind of grew more and more to the point where urban legend almost became reality in a way. They sort of meshed together. There's this really great documentary from 2009 called Cropsey. And the Cropsey. It's on Netflix and YouTube. I highly recommend that one as well. There used to be, I guess, on it was Staten Island, I believe, in New York. They had this mental institution that closed down, but a lot of the patients ended up going back and living there because they had nowhere else to go. So they were sort of living on the grounds. And back then it was a highly wooded area, and some children started to disappear in the area. And eventually they caught and put in jail this guy they suspected of kidnapping and killing a couple kids, and he was mentally retarded. People started to get paranoid and creeped out, and the sort of the Cropsey legend started to grow. That sort of urban legend kind of thing actually sort of came into real life, like a real life Cropsey kind of thing, stealing kids and killing people in the woods and stuff like that. Really, really excellent documentary. Highly recommended. It's very unsettling. Like it's not specifically a horror movie, but it is a kind of a really horrific documentary in a lot of ways, where you see the way an entire community was shattered by this sort of real life occurrence surrounding an urban legend. But anyway,
this sounds way more interesting than Mad Men.
It is. It really is. But anyway, they were originally going to go with something around that, but they had to change in the last minute because another movie being shot called The Burning, which we're going to cover later on in the series, was already sort of based around the Cropsey legend. So they changed it to Madman. It was originally going to be Madman: The Legend Lives, but they just shortened it to Madman. It was shot in November 1980 in Southampton, Long Island. And I'll go to you right first, Daniel, if you want to give your initial thoughts on this one.
Sure. I'll be honest. I kind of, I'm like, I'll watch anything. I've got no problems with it. Horror is probably it's certainly the genre I watch the least. I hardly ever sit down and go, yeah, let's watch a horror movie. It's just kind of, I just kind of find it, all right, sure. Unless there's some kind of something to dig my teeth into, more conceptually. But I definitely am interested in watching all these movies just to kind of get the Lee and Paul crash course in slasher movies. So I'm going into this swinging, and trying to get what I can get out of it. Madman, quite frankly, bored the shit out of me for about the middle third at the very least. There's some clever stuff here. It feels very cheap. It feels like kind of a Halloween ripoff. I mean, to a degree to where it really does just feel like a cash grab. It doesn't feel like there was like really kind of artistic intent to it. Mm-hmm. I kind of enjoyed the ending of the film, the girl, kind of being chased, and I thought that there was some clever stuff there. My favorite kill was the noose wrapped around the guy's neck, where he's pulled up over in a very cartoonish way, I might add, as if the titular Madman is a figure of enormous strength who can also then at the end be killed with a small penknife. So we'll keep that in mind.
But he's not killed in the end, though. So
well, sure. Slow down at the very least.
Yeah.
I thought it was worth 90 minutes of my time, but I'll admit during the middle section I was kind of glazing over just a little bit. Just kind of I don't feel like there's any tension to the film. I don't feel like it really does anything with its premise. In particular, the bit with the axe and the stump, where I thought at the beginning the two guys are trying to pull the axe out of the stump, and I thought, oh, there's going to be some interesting bit of business that happens here later. Whether either the killer does something clever with it, or the people being chased by the killer, can't get it out of the stump, or maybe they can, or maybe, they find some, in a better film, you'd find something, you'd set that up and then you do something with it, and then later on it's just supposed to, I guess, show the Madman's enormous strength that he can pull it out of the, which I guess is fine. I don't know what else I have to say about Madman, honestly. Your thoughts, Lee? Are you going to tell me I'm an idiot for not seeing this for the cinematic genius that it is?
No.
I did like the score. I did.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the score. When I was going through this list with Paul, I was trying to think of ones that I could, because we had you in mind too as well, and stuff we wanted to introduce you to, because as listeners may know, Paul and I are much more into horror films than Daniel is to a degree. So
I'm not a horror film junkie, so it's fine. I'm enjoying it though.
So I actually wanted to start with Madman because it's probably one of the most pedestrian, by-the-numbers sort of slasher in the woods films you can think of. That is also doesn't really have much to it, but it's still quite competently made. All the same, like it's not like one of those really, really cheap bad ones that just looks bad, because this is all shot in night photography, and it's actually all looks really good for what they got out of it, right?
Technically speaking, it looks good. I mean, it doesn't look fake. It looks, it looks good. I'm not in any way trying to knock on the filmmakers, the technical expertise. It's more just, on the kind of script level,
Yeah. I mean, it was budgeted for $350,000, and it grossed $530,000. So it was a moderate sort of drive-in kind of success kind of thing. Well, maybe not drive-in at that point, but it was only on like 72 screens. It was a very limited release. I mean, this was it
cost some money. It made some money for the people that made it, and then they went on and did other things like that's. Well,
hardly anyone went on to do anything else in this film.
Well, they went on to become real estate agents or whatever. That was kind of more what I was implying, but
Yeah, I mean, everyone here was pretty much first-time actors except for like Galen Ross and the guy who played the older counselor, Frederick Newman. But most of these other people, this was their first time acting, and it definitely shows. I mean, Paul was, quote unquote here. He would probably agree that the acting level was somewhere on par with like Friday the 13th Part 5. It was about that good. Galen Ross definitely stands out. Although she doesn't really have a lot to work with, she at least competently looks like she's a real person in a real situation. And man, does she fucking look hot in this film, by the way.
Oh no, absolutely.
I thought she looked good in Dawn of the Dead, but this is like 4 years afterwards, and she blossomed quite a bit, I must say. And of course, she also is nice enough to show off some of her bare skin in the hot tub scene early on in the film.
Yeah, the extended sequence where they are doing circles in the hot tub. I was, they're okay. All right. I guess this is what this movie is right now. We had a couple minutes to fill with footage. I get it. All right.
It's not quite the sex scene in Showgirls in the swimming pool, but
not quite that good. Yeah,
I like the production on this a lot. There are some really good ideas in it, but as you said, they really don't come together with much for it. Like they set it up with the sort of urban legend thing. Like I really like the setup with the campfire tale thing, where they start off and that guy starts singing the Madman Mars song, and then the older counselor takes over and tells the story of Madman Mars, sets it all up really nice. So that's really interesting. So you think something like really kind of spooky is going to happen, and then really it's not all that spooky. It's the wise ass guy in the group. He makes the mistake of calling out Madman Mars's name really loud, which is the thing you're not supposed to do. And then he sees Madman Mars, and then this fucking character bumbles and stumbles through the rest of the fucking film. He gets to Madman Mars's house, doesn't seem too fazed by what he sees in there at first. He leaves the house, gets lost in the woods, comes back to the fucking house, sees Madman Mars a couple times. How Madman Mars hasn't killed him in the woods 3 or 4 times, all the fucking walking around he's doing, I don't know, but...
Who wants consistency from a thing like this? Really. I mean, don't pay attention to the logic. Don't try to map out these characters' journeys ever.
I just found it amusing how he basically stumbles around the woods the entire film, and they don't really do anything with him other than make him like the guy who goes crazy at the end, who survives and goes nuts. They do sort of change up the formula a bit for slasher films. Not that there was really a formula back then that, is now like referenced in Scream and stuff like that these days. But back then there still wasn't really established the final girl formula and let's go off alone in the dark and let's split up and stuff like that. There's none of that stuff was known back then. So. But it's interesting to see, like, the final girl doesn't survive, killer gets away, the only survivor is left presumably gone nuts, after witnessing all this shit. So I thought there was some interesting stuff there. I liked the makeup effects for Madman Mars, and also the gore effects I thought were really, really well done for the budget. I think they spent basically most of their money on those because they all looked pretty good as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, nothing that looks outright comical or silly. I think my favorite element of the film actually is the fact that it's a summer camp with more counselors than kids.
Yeah,
there are like 5 children in this entire camp. I think that's not a financially well-run camp.
I think it was supposed to be a camp for gifted students or something like that. So you assume maybe it's like a rich kids camp or something along those lines. But they never really get into it, right? Like they never.
You never get any like perspective on it. Also, it appears that every teenager in this camp is 30 years old. That's another.
Yeah, I'm assuming it was, like a some sort of like retreat for gifted students or something like that. And I was kind of hoping that they were going to like incorporate the actual kids as well into it somehow. Mm-hmm. But they basically show up at the beginning of the film, they disappear for most of the film, and then they show up again so Galen Ross's character can put them on a bus and send them the fuck out of the camp, and that's about it.
It's really expensive to have child actors in a film. That's all. Like you only have you can only work them for like 3 hours at a time or something, and you shoot them at the beginning, you get a little bit of coverage, and you shoot them at the end, and then where were you in the middle? Oh, they were asleep in the cabin. That's how it goes.
Yeah, interesting fact, they were originally going to approach Vincent Price for the role of the older counselor, Max, but this wasn't a union production, so they figured they wouldn't have a chance of getting him, so they just decided not to. The guy who did the music, it was Stephen Horlick, and producer Gary Sales did the music together, and I thought that was pretty effective. Like, it's kind of goofy in a little bit of a way, but it's also... It strikes a really weird tone as well.
Yeah, it's that kind of era of the electronic score. I mean, it feels like they're trying to do Carpenter. They're trying to do the Carpenter ripoff, but it's a competent Carpenter ripoff. I thought, and points towards maybe a better movie. Again, one of the things I think I keep coming back to when you look at these kind of schlocky things, and I said this during the sex comedy month as well. Was just on a certain level, if you don't have money, good writing is free.
Yeah.
So you can write like clever things for free essentially, and that's just kind of where I land. If you're gonna do something with no budget, give me something else to come to it for, either a good story or some cool effects or something. And this just kind of, I don't know. There was very little to hold my attention in Madman, unfortunately. But it was a time waster.
Yeah. I enjoy it. This, if anyone's familiar with the Hatchet series from, I guess, the 2000s, Madman Mars and essentially some of the mechanics of the story, it's pretty big influence on that series, really. Like, there's a lot of similarities. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. I enjoy it for what it is. It's not one that I think is necessarily one of the best slasher films ever. I can see why some people consider it a cult classic. Because it does have some sort of weird elements to it that are you don't really find in a lot of other slasher films at the time. And Also, it helps that it went into sort of video obscurity for quite a while. Like at the end of the VHS era, it kind of disappeared for quite a while, so people were looking for it. And yeah, I mean, it's worth seeing. You can find it on YouTube for free. There's DVDs of it floating around everywhere, and it's a decent time waster. I think Madman Mars deserves a better film. I think maybe they should remake this one. Like, I'm usually against remakes, but this would be one that they could incorporate more of the urban legend kind of story into it and maybe make it better. As long as you don't make it a found footage film. Don't make it a found footage film. Just
directed by Brett Ratner.
Yeah.
With Chris Tucker as Madman Mars.
Yeah. Well, I'll just get to a couple Paul's comments here, and hopefully we'll have them on audio in the second part of this podcast tomorrow. He says, Bloody Murder is a bad slasher if you want to watch a bad one. Yeah, I've seen that one, and no one wants to watch that one because that is pretty bad. Although Bloody Murder 2 has a lot of nice titties in it. And he says, Blue Underground did a good release of Madman, and yes, they did. If you find the Blue Underground disc for cheap, pick it up. It's definitely worth your while, just for the extras and for the just the details behind it. I think the production details are more interesting than the actual film overall. Yeah. Mild recommendation from me. I don't know if you would give it a mild recommendation or not, Daniel, but
if you're a genre completist, I guess you should watch it. I'm probably never going to watch it again or really think of it again. Quite honestly, I don't know that there's a reason to, but I would like to see a remake of it. I would like to see the better version. I think there is really I want to see that documentary. That's kind of my next goal.
I'm gonna
see documentary is probably a better use of my time than watching this again. So.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Actually, we should probably do an episode on that sometime.
Documentary month. I'd go for that.
We could do it.
It was 1945, the night of the graduation dance. The war overseas had just ended. The terror at home
Roy
was about to begin.
Roy?
Come on, kid. Don't play hard to get. What about New Year's Eve?
Well, that was different. I couldn't help myself.
The Prowler. If he wants you, he'll get you. Tonight, the terror begins again.
They never found out who did it. But it had to be someone in town, someone who knew that she was called Rose. And Mark, that guy still might be around here.
Oh, man, I don't believe this. You're talking about something that happened over 30 years ago.
Whenever the time was right, he'd come back. The Prowler. If he wants you, he'll get you. Night after night, he waited for her. The Prowler. If he gets you, you'll wish you were dead. just when you catch your breath, it starts all over again. You may think you're safe, but you're dead wrong. The Prowler, coming soon.
All right, we're going to move on now to The Prowler from 1981, directed by Joseph Zito, who is probably better known, well, he's known for this one, but he's also known for doing Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, and 2 Chuck Norris vehicles, Missing in Action and Invasion USA.
And Red Scorpion, which was produced by Jack Abramoff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was the movie that Jack Abramoff made to try to convince people to hate communism and love Reagan.
Written by Neil Barbera and Glenn Leopold, starring Vicki Dawson as Pam McDonald, Christopher Goutman as Mark London, Lawrence Tierney, who is a favorite actor of mine and a famous actor, although he's almost kind of unrecognizable in this film, as Major Chatham. Farley Granger, who is best known for Strangers on a Train and Rope from a couple decades earlier as Sheriff George Fraser. Cindy Winthrop as Lisa Dunsheath as Sherry, and David Cederholm as Carl. This was known as Rosemary's Killer in international markets. And this one revolves around a double murder right after the war in 1945, and essentially the events 35 years later connected to it. There's a killer going around stalking people. Is it the same killer? Is it a killer that has been rumored to be heading towards the town? This is a movie that throws a lot of red herrings your way. Yeah, I'll let you get right into it with your thoughts there, Daniel.
Sure. I like this a lot more than Madman. This one definitely would be a recommend for me if you're interested in this kind of film. I'll say at the beginning when I first hit play on this, I was kind of thinking, did I hit play on the right film?
Yeah.
Because it opens, it does that kind of cold open into a newsreel footage from the late 40s, or at least a kind of fake newsreel. I imagine it's a real newsreel on the budget this film had. And then moves into what looks like a very 1940s-style movie. Like, it actually kind of feels old-fashioned. And I kind of, I have this love for black and white photography, which you probably have gathered from listening to me talk on this podcast enough. I was kind of immediately drawn in just by the kind of conceit at the beginning. I kind of wish all the sequences in the 1945 sequence were in black and white.
That'd be cool.
But I understand how in the audience in 1981 didn't really want to, that was not commercially viable at all at that period. That was kind of my one bit with that little sequence was, I'd love to see this little bit in black and white. Moves on to the modern day. Again, it's a dead teenager movie, and it kind of moves along. It's got a much more, I'll say it's much more atmospheric. It actually kind of the long sequences of people wandering around in the woods, or not in the woods, but houses or around bushes or whatever. They're shot and edited, and you feel much more kind of claustrophobic. You feel like there's something skulking in the shadows. It is more effective, just on a technical level. I know it has a much higher budget than Madman did, so but again, not all of that is is just a budgetary thing. It's just kind of based on just how the film is shot and edited. And the performances work pretty well. This one kind of held my attention all the way through. I do think that there's this idea of the kind of the sons of the fathers coming back, and the kind of the GI killer kind of idea that the movie doesn't really do anything with beyond its first 20 minutes or so. And then the reveal at the end I thought was kind of completely unearned. I didn't, maybe watching it again, I went back actually after I finished the film, and I went and watched kind of selected sequences again, and I guess they're kind of hinting at certain things, but I don't know that that knowledge pays off in any way in the structure of the film. But this one again, much better film overall. The gore effects are amazing. I guess it's Tom Savini in his prime, so I did look on the Wikipedia page about this one, so I did realize I was like, wow, the gore effects are really nice on this. I'll bet it's Tom Savini. And then I clicked, oh yeah, it's Tom Savini. I'm proud of myself for knowing the work of Tom Savini on a glance. But I will say, just because I'm the one to kind of intellectualize these things a little bit, the nudity in the film is quite nice. But the way that the film is edited, it really plays with that idea that the nudity and the violence go hand in hand. Because the girl in the shower, I mean, you get your first kind of look at her breasts just as the pitchfork is going through, and the blood draining out of her, and that sort of thing. I mean, it's really definitely playing with the audience's expectations. And then later on, the girl who gets killed in the pool, my favorite gore effect is actually the knife going through her neck.
Yeah,
really effectively done. As she dies, you kind of get like a shot of her bum, and you get a little bit of a like it's treated in this lascivious manner. I'm not sure what the filmmaker's trying to say about it, but I thought it was interesting, that there was this kind of pairing of these images, at least those two instances. The most sexualized these characters are when they are dying, when they are being attacked by the killer. It can either be nice or very dark, depending on how you look at it. But
it feels like the killer's motivations kind of aren't earned. Like it just feels like, oh, he's just killing because, hey, we need someone to kill teenagers. He happened to kill 2 people back in 30 years ago, but why is he all of a sudden killing again? Like, they do make a thing about they're restarting the dance or whatever that happened on the night. So I guess they're trying to imply that there's some sort of maybe trigger went off in the guy's brain because of that. But it looks like they're also sort of connecting like young sexuality to basically triggering his violent tendencies as well. When they show the girl fully nude in the shower being stabbed, that's where you first get the view of her basically fully nude is when the pitchfork is in her and she's starting to bleed to death. A shot of the girl in the swimming pool with her butt and legs and stuff, which usually would be really nice to look at. All of a sudden you've got all this blood starting to flow down into the swimming pool and turn all the water red. It's almost like the director was trying to make everyone feel really uncomfortable for wanting to see them nude and see them sexy. The death scenes in this are actually fantastically done. Tom Savini has said that this is his favorite movie he's worked on. He thinks it's his best work as far as his effects go. And I find myself hard-pressed to disagree because there are some really great ones here. Paul points out in the comments that he thinks the shower scene was the best shower death scene ever. Eat your heart out, Psycho.
I got a hard on for Psycho. Sorry, but
he said the one with the bayonet being put down through the guy's skull and coming out at the bottom of his jaw. That is fantastically done, and how they got the guy's, they used a puppet, of course, but they had the guy's eyes roll all the way up, and you used to see the whites of his eyes. Really effective looking. And Paul, of course, says even though they were being stabbed while they were nude, it was still nice to look at. He says fantastic.
I mean, the girl at the beginning, she was gorgeous. I'm in no way. I was like, that's I would like to see her in more films. And then I looked her up, and it's like, oh, she did like 2 other movies. So it's funny looking at the IMDb credits and just kind of glancing through. I tend to find a lot of these forgotten early '80s gems, and you just kind of go, man, I need to like watch some of these just for shits and giggles. Like, go dig them up and see what they were all about, what mainstream comedies in 1981 looked like.
Yeah, Paul says slashers are the era for the one-hit wonder film star. Yeah, the only people who really went on to do anything, of course, Lawrence Tierney still had some films in his future, like Reservoir Dogs, probably most notable one, and Christopher Goutman, who was the young deputy sheriff. He went on to do something with tons of fucking daytime soaps. Like that was his career after that. So
Yeah, I was looking. There was one of the writers or directors or something, or maybe that was it. He ended up directing like 106 episodes of As the World Turns or something like that.
Yeah. Hey, whatever you want to do.
It's a career. I can't you can't complain about it.
The opening is, like you said, it's done really well. It kind of reminded me a bit of The Town That Dreaded Sundown and how it sort of captures that.
I had that thought too. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think it was as effective as The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
No.
It felt a little generic in terms of the way it was shot, and maybe that's just kind of the early 80s-ness of it. Just kind of all those movies kind of feel the same.
Of course, The Town That Dreaded Sundown had a lot more time to, sort of really capture that era because the entire film's set in that era. So, that's kind of an unfair comparison in that way. But like I said, it throws some pretty subtle red herrings out there. Like, eventually you sort of come to the conclusion, oh yeah, it must be this person who's the actual killer. But for a while there, it definitely throws a bunch of different people out there. There's the Carrie ending in this, where it's the sort of dream sequence shock ending for a second there, or whatever, the sort of false ending. The the poor girl who was in the swimming pool there. It took 18 takes for her being kicked in the face before they got the shot they wanted.
Oh God. Oh, poor girl.
The effect, the really great effect at the end there, where the killer finally gets his. They did a plaster cast of the guy's face, and apparently he wasn't too happy with it. Apparently he whimpered and whined the whole time when he was having it done on him. But they actually shot a real shotgun. It wasn't blanks. They shot a real shotgun to blow up the head for that shot. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, really effectively done. This one again, it's a bit better constructed, a bit more interesting than Madman. But at the same time, it's also fairly standard for this kind of film. Like,
I think it works more or less.
It does.
Whereas I think that Madman for me just kind of didn't build anything. This definitely felt like there was more of a walls are closing in element to this.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite sequences, which kind of goes nowhere but kind of doesn't, is the bit with the hotel clerk, the fat guy with the beard, playing solitaire, who doesn't want to get his fat ass out of the chair.
Yeah, sure, I can go check for you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll say that was kind of one of those, like, once you realize what's going on, there's kind of a haunting element to that, maybe, once you kind of realize who the kid really was, and kind of what you might have discovered if you had actually done that. But then again, it's kind of it builds tension just through a shot of a dude just sitting and playing solitaire.
Yeah.
Screenplays are all about structure, and movies are all about kind of building little pieces onto one another. And sometimes it's not what you're looking at; it's what's not happening that can really build that tension. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was nice, and the fact that you're just sitting and looking at this guy for a good 2 or 3 minutes in the middle of this film, which should be your the point of the film where you're getting the most kind of movement. You have this big still sequence and then there's just the sheriff sitting on the phone, like, come on, he's a little like tapping a pencil at one point. I thought, bold choice, but I think it works very well.
Yeah, it's both a tension builder, but it's also a bit of a little comic relief thing too. You're right, the film becomes very claustrophobic as it goes on, and it really ramps up the tension. So you get a little breather for the audience there, just for a couple minutes. I thought, like I said, again, it's a very standard structure, but it works very well. I think a lot of people overlook this film. Like, this is another one that's considered definitely sort of more of a cult classic slasher than a lot of them. Part of the reason is because its distribution was really bad back in the day. They eventually, like, someone actually, this was a $1 million budget film. There was a distribution company that offered them $750,000 if they could get the distribution rights. So that would have been $750,000 of the budget right there. They turned it down to opt to distribute the film themselves, and this film was a money loser. It was a box office failure. So there you go.
Proving that the business of show business is as important as the artistic side in some cases. Not a great film, for me, but entertaining. And this would be one I might actually visit again. I would actually sit down and could possibly see myself enjoying it. I do wish. It is kind of one of those things where watching this on a kind of a television screen or a computer screen, sitting on my couch kind of defeats the purpose of these kind of films. I feel like watching it on a big screen in the dark, or at a drive-in movie theater, that sort of thing, where you can't just hit stop and go and play with the dog or whatever, would probably help the experience of these films, where even something like Madman would have worked. I mean, I was thinking Madman really would have worked a lot better on the big screen. That kind of being in that environment would make it, because you kind of have no choice but to look at the screen. So
it would be nice to watch Madman in like a rural drive-in theater where there's a lot of woods around. That would probably really help it a lot. But they should still remake Madman. Anyone listening out there, you big money producers, you're listening to this podcast, remake Madman. I'll throw $5 in your Indiegogo if that's what it takes.
You know, I will double that. I'd throw $10 in your Indiegogo.
There you go.
You know, if there's get a good name behind it. Get some get a good script. You know, go with the concept and then write a good script. That's the. Can we get the guy behind Dead Snow on it? I'd watch that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Paul says also just watch horror films at night in the woods alone and see what the difference is. They actually had a screening, I think they do of Jaws, where they put everyone in like a swimming pool.
Yeah, they put everybody in a swimming pool, and you're like you have like a floaty or whatever. You're sitting in an inner tube, and then they show the movie. I think that's awesome. I can only imagine.
That's fucking ingenious. That's great. I love that.
All right. Paul, I'm going to ask you here where you can message me. Have you ever told ghost stories by a campfire?
He says indeed.
Yeah. The reason being because when I was watching the beginning of Madman, I was like, I have never fucking sat around a campfire and told ghost stories. Is this the thing that anyone does? And I thought, Paul's done it. I know Paul has sat around a campfire and told fucking ghost stories. Lee, I was 50-50 on. Yeah, I figured you might have, might not have. No, maybe as a kid, maybe when I was in the Boy Scouts or something, but I never as an adult. So
So yeah, I think definitely a bit of a higher recommendation from both of us for the Prowler. It's definitely one worth seeking, and it's definitely a bit of a lesser known one. It's one of those ones where you might have saw it back in the day on a video shelf, and you're just like, I'm not going to watch this one. I'm just going to go for. Actually, a good comparison one is My Bloody Valentine, which sort of has a similar plot as well, to a certain degree, and the killers look a lot the same. So I think a lot of people might have went for My Bloody Valentine back then because that one had a bit of a gorier cover and stuff like that. So that one might have. Paul says they were both released the same year, and they had similar elements. But yeah, I definitely recommend it. I assume you.
Yeah, no, I would recommend the Prowler. If you're comparing the two, the Prowler is absolutely the better film, no question. Mm-hmm. It's Citizen Kane compared to Madman. Again, this is sort of one of those get a bunch of friends together, put it on the big screen, have some beers and some popcorn, and go to town on some classic horror movies. All right,
Daniel, would you like to tell everyone about your Doctor Who podcast?
Sure. I have a Doctor Who podcast called Oi Spaceman, a Doctor Who love story. I do it with my wife. You can find it at Oi Spaceman. That's oispaceman.libsyn.com. We're taking a little break from the classic Who. We're going to do in the next couple of weeks going to be some new Who. We're doing the Series 8 recap, which I've already recorded, which is going to be interesting. If you've never tuned into the podcast before, this might be the one to tune into. And then after that, we're going to do 10th Doctor story, Turn Left. So the 15 people listening to this, nobody watches Doctor Who. Nobody cares, but you can find me there if you're so.
And hopefully we'll be moving over to Paul here for audio.
Oh, I forgot to mention the crazy-ass new wave band in the Prowler.
Oh, yeah.
They had these, like, three guys on a stage, and you shoot them for one angle, and you just have partygoers in front of them, and then just keep cutting back to that same shot. For the entire movie,
and they were in their first couple songs they were playing were like typical sort of prom kind of dance kind of stuff, for kids or whatever of the era. And then like the third song they were playing was like the lyrics were all about watching you bleed and stuff like that. I was like, okay,
thematic resonance, Lee.
Yeah. All right, now we're back with Paul, and we're going to be talking some slasher movies. We unfortunately couldn't get Paul on the audio the previous night, but we have him here now. We're just going to get his thoughts on the two movies we covered, Madman and The Prowler. So if you'd like to start with Madman there, Paul, you want to give your general impressions of the film and what you think about it.
Okay. Well, I'm here now, and basically I'm only going to just sparsely mention on what you guys have already talked about. Pretty in-depth for what you would on both films. So I'm just going to go on to my little rant here. Probably one of the ugliest hunks in a film. For me.
Yeah.
This squirrely Italian that wants to get in everybody's pants. That's fun. And very forward. I like that. He's a forward. He knows what he wants. Even though he wouldn't scare the pants off a sheep. That's interesting. The camp, the overall movie's great. I like the style of it. It's a very bare bones, straight to the genre before the genre actually had its merits. I don't really know how to describe it other than that. It's solid to the genre, or more above to the genre, because the genre at the time, to me anyway, wasn't fortified yet.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have its standards. You know what I mean? So it was nice, and the ending kind of coincides with the idea of the legend, because you can't have a legend if everything finishes. If you know what I mean, you can't have the legend if it has a concrete conclusion. So the house burns, things happen. Hopefully, I'm not spoiling this movie from 1982 for you. You never see a death. This is the one when I actually watched it a couple different times. I was wondering, like, okay, I see hay and candles. This thing's got to go up in flame, But first time I watched it, I didn't expect the simple wound to distract him enough to get the house on fire. You know what I mean? Like, I thought I was actually expecting a concrete finish, and then when I get it, I get it. There you go, because it's the legend. The legend lives, Madman.
Yeah.
As you said, the wandering douchebag through the world, finally, at the end is traumatized, even though it's perfectly fine the whole time.
Yeah.
So walk through the woods and go exploring with not a problem. Never seemed to run for help at all either.
No.
Perfectly fine, but I'm traumatized. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how he got traumatized at the very fucking end after, he had spent the entire movie, like, he went to the dude's house. He found, like, skeletons and dead bodies and stuff in his cellar. He's seen the guy stalking around the woods with a fucking axe. And then finally, by the end of the film, he gets found on the fucking roadside by the head counselor or whatever, the older guy. And then all of a sudden he's like, he's real.
He's real. Man, he's real. But, maybe he doesn't like fire. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Traumatized. Flame. Can't do it. It's fine by the campfire, though, so that fucking theory's down the drain.
Yeah.
What a douchebag. But, so a loose plot there. Not a bad movie at all. Little failures here and there of, like, atomic things, like when he jumped on her head and cut her head off. Her arms were in the truck too, but nothing happened to those.
Yeah.
Her whole upper body was in, and there you go. I think it would be better if it was like locked in, like the trunk was crushed and she was just in there.
Yeah.
Because if you're really horny, you can just pop up the back of her and she's fine. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. The kills were pretty good. I like the fact that a lot of the kills were not... You're basically saving money by not showing a lot of the kills all the way, if you know what I mean. But the ones that did happen were very effective.
Yeah, like Daniel and I were saying, the first one there with the rope, the hanging, was like really well done.
That and wasn't the chef, the cook, the drunk?
Oh yeah, the chef got his throat ripped out. Yeah,
the first one that got killed. You guys were mentioning about the lack of campers, and obviously, if you watch the film, you see that. But I always got the vibe it was the end of the season. Most of them were already gone. There was just the stragglers that were left waiting to go.
Yeah, that could be.
Idea that I was getting on there. Surprising when I watched it, and I always keep forgetting and I always watch it again and go, oh, yeah, he doesn't die, does he? Because I'm always expecting the head counselor to die in these films anymore. Mm-hmm. And I watched it over again. I go, no, he lives the whole time. That's right.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. It's like you go back, like I hadn't seen this one. Like when I first saw this one, it was like, I don't know, maybe the 1990s, somewhere around then. You go into this one having expectations of what the genre was by then. So when you go into it, you're expecting, okay, Galen Ross is going to be the final girl. She's going to kill Madman Mars and survive. You think the head counselor, who's the experienced older guy who can take charge, he's going to come back and like, I'm going to fuck you guys up. I'm going to fuck this fucking monster up. And no, he doesn't even get killed. He's just there at the end. That's all.
Well, we were going to get like Adam Bomb or Mike Awesome as the head guy, but we got this scrawny Italian guy, so just kill him. Rewrite the whole damn thing. It was interesting, the cocky jock. I mean, because he tried to play it as best as he could. And it was a stab in the face. I can do this. I can just do a pull up. We'll be all right. Don't worry about it. Oh, shit, he's back. I like that. Oh, he's going to get out. He's going to get out. No, he's not going to get out.
Yeah.
The best thing about the film is Madman. And, tits are good too. But, they made sure to make sure you all know that he's not human anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The human in him is dead. He doesn't make a single human noise in the movie. And that's the other thing. Like, he never makes a humanized noise. It's always some kind of crazed, like, animalistic. It's not as bad as, like, Slaughterhouse, where the guy oinks the whole time. But, like, the noises he makes are not contrary to normal human.
He's almost like Sasquatch with an axe at this point.
Yeah, basically, he formed into a snatch squatch. And and he can't smell himself now because the nose thing. It was pretty interesting. I liked the kind of the macabre gallery in the basement. I like the scene. I like the film footage. I like the way it was filmed. I like the darkness the film has to it.
Yep.
The deaths are good, like I said. When Poodle Girl gets hit with the axe, I think that's a very very fun scene. I think I actually like that whole chase scene with her, especially when she hides in the fridge.
Hides in the fridge, yeah.
You know what I mean? I would expect to see a film based on mocking that, where a guy or something like, one of the Wayans brothers hides in the fridge and then sees beer in the fucking side racks and starts drinking it. You hear this, the cracking open noise, and the killer wakes up and he's like half fucking lit. That would be funny.
Oh, if they were making those scary movie fucking films back in the day, they probably would do that.
Bobby Wood did that, yes. Yeah. Exactly. And I'm like, hey, by the way, throw that in the movie. Oh, that's a great idea. But other than that, it's not a bad movie. It's above standard for the genre because the genre, like I said, wasn't exactly absorbed by that time.
Mm-hmm.
I know Daniel doesn't like it very much. There's not a lot of meat to it. I'm one of those guys that would take a plain steak with a little salt and pepper on it. Then I would do, a whole goulash meal with all these sides and trimmings. I would rather have something simplistic and meaty than that. And that's what this has. It's very plain Jane. It's got a nice little spice and a cool nuance. I think the vibe, the legend vibe, if you don't know it, I always think those make for fun films because legends are better than just a serial killer. They always put legend in there. It makes the camp things a little bit more interesting. Like The Burning, it's more of this happened back in the day. That's it. And then they didn't actually expect them to come back or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like Sleepaway Camp. You don't have a legend. You don't have anything. It's more just a straight slasher for no reason. This is more of just the thing. A lot of the nuances in the film, like when he hides in the tree line and stuff, I really do like that.
Mm-hmm.
Madman is a bit padded. If he walks like he's got a dump in his pants half the time. Like he's wearing a Santa suit underneath his long johns because he's just kind of like do 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 do. He's not really like a Jason that is just charging through the woods, not running, but just stomping straight forward, not a fight. He's kind of cumbersome, it looks like at times. And then half the time he's like running through the damn woods on like an ape, like just going to town. Not a problem. I'm sprinting through the woods. Woohoo! Walks. He starts waddling. I'm like, okay, two different people. It's pretty fun. It's a fun film. I like it. Yeah. It's not anything overblown, but it's good. Yeah, it's a good film. I wouldn't. If you're a camp killer, slasher guy, and you haven't seen this one, definitely watch it because I think you'll appreciate it. If you're looking for deep contemplation about stuff, I wouldn't really go for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he doing it? Why is he doing it? Look at him. Why wouldn't you? If I looked like that, I'd be cutting people up left and right. It's okay. Yeah. That kind of thing. I do like the idea when they first tell the story of it, how he snapped and killed his whole family. That you think you do stop for a little bit and go, wonder what happened. Yeah, what? But he was already a fuckwad before he snapped. He wasn't a pillar of community, then snapped and decided to go kill his family. He was a douchebag anyway. But yeah, pretty good film overall.
Okay, so we'll move on and we'll get your thoughts on The Prowler.
Okay, The Prowler, 1981. That's a good film. That's a film that I didn't appreciate because I didn't get a chance to really sit down and watch it when I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
So this one was a film that I was introduced to in the last few years. So it was one of those films that you get pissed off when you watch it because you're like, where the fuck were you my whole life? I have a similar memory of when my mom started buying Mountain Dew and I realized it was out since the 70s. What's wrong with you? What kind of mother are you? Waiting this long to buy this, bitch. But the Prowler is definitely a nice film. It's got Tom Savini probably at his best. The death scene in the shower, I still think, and I'm still blown away by it when I watch it. I go, oh my god, this film, the gore effects are so realistic, so well done. Titties. I like that. I mean, they weren't shy.
Yeah.
But the nudity in the film and the sexuality is weird. It's covert. It's not exactly in your face all the time. Like some of these films that if the gore effects are super overblown, the tits are super overblown. Usually if you see the acting is subpar. That's why they do it. Overall, it's good. She could have been nude in the pool. That really would have helped for me. I'm fine with that. The gore effects are great. I know you guys love the pool scene. The knife through the throat is definitely effective. The two scenes that go through with the shower are still my favorite. That creeped me out the first time I watched him pull his eyes up into his skull.
Oh yeah, that's both those kills are brutal. Like the right through the skull and you see the whites of his eyes, like just so well done. And then the pitchfork in the shower is just it's really just almost makes you want to cringe, just because it doesn't kill her right away. She's just basically pinned to the fucking wall and just like slowly dying.
Yeah, the film basis, the plot is like many of these other ones that you've seen. Get a plot that's probably as wide as cunt hair and just say, okay, then I have to start killing. There you go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A loose plot based on something that happened long ago. They banned it and they're going to bring it back, and that means the killer's still around and it triggers something in him and he comes back and starts killing again. I was hooked on the Prowler as soon as the first death scene happened because I wasn't expecting it, and I was making out, boom, pitchfork right through both of them. I'm like, okay, this film's awesome. Wow, I'm already like, I already love this film. The first death, cool.
And even that one's kind of almost kind of slow and brutal in a way, because he gets the initial pitchfork into the dude's back, but then he has to kick it in a little more to get to her, and then kick it in even more to finish her off.
Yeah, I mean, she's pinned. She can't do anything. She's like, oh shit. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it has the newsreel footage at the beginning. I mean, you guys have already gone over all this stuff. And the kooky band.
Yeah.
That's all right.
And was the old? I was confused. Was the old guy in like 35 years later that was at the dance? Was he supposed to be the band leader from back then? I can't remember.
I don't even know. I can't even remember that one. I didn't notice that part.
Yeah, because there was an old guy saying, "Oh, this is the way it used to be with all the kids dancing and stuff." And I'm like, "Is that supposed to be the band leader from before?" I can't remember. But
yeah, I would. Is that the stereotypical phrase that everyone says?
Yeah, well, yeah, true. But
one of the things that I could tell you now, watching these older movies again, women just aren't. They're hot in a different way now. They're not hot like they were back then. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, the women back in the 70s and early 80s and stuff, for me, they just have a hotness of their own.
Maybe there's a different level of modesty that makes you more interested in what they have to say and what they have to show compared to now.
They definitely understood that just plain cotton panties were hot back then.
Mm-hmm.
It's Veronica's, Victoria's Secret. It's not so secret when you're using a string.
Yeah. One of the problems I noticed with this film, and I didn't mention it when I was talking to Daniel, there's a couple characters that sort of disappear from the film. Lawrence Tierney's character, the major or whatever, who's in the wheelchair, he just sort of vanishes from the film. Like he's a red herring suspect for half the film, and then they never really find out where he went. He just sort of disappears.
He just drops out.
Yeah, and also there's the more geeky couple in the dance who go down the basement to have sex, and you think there's going to be a stock scene where someone's going to come out and kill them, and it never happens. It's just left up in the air that whatever happens to them. It's like they hear a noise. It's like, I think I heard something. Oh, it's probably just the wind, and then they cut away and they never come back to it.
Well, I think with that one, there was probably something, and it didn't go out right, and they cut it out of the film. I think it probably might just be one of those things where it's monetary budget restraints, and it just didn't go right, and they're like, you know what, just fuck it. Why they didn't cut out the whole scene, I'm not really sure, because it does feel fragmented away from what's actually going on. It help anything. What happened with Mr. Wheelchair? No one will ever know.
Because he never shows up. He never shows up after that.
The overall, I didn't actually, and I'm talking to you, I already mentioned this, I didn't get a chance. I should have got the chance to sit down and rewatch both these movies before the podcast so I could really pick things apart and talk about it more. But with kid constraints, I didn't get a chance to do that. I'm going by memory more than going by memory instead of Yeah,
that's fine.
I just remember tits in movies. I don't remember anything else. The Prowler, it's solid. It's a solid storyline.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you kind of understand. It doesn't need explaining. It echoes similar to the film of the same year of the one that had a better publicity and better production rates and better distribution, which is My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
The Valentine's Day dance. They're bringing it back, and it makes Harry go fucking ape shit and starts killing people. My Bloody Valentine had the extra appeal of a dark, creepy cave mine shaft that it could play off the light and shadow and darkness and stuff. And both, surprisingly, I'm surprised there wasn't more of a problematic situation with the characters' appearances. Because, yeah, we know that they're gas masks used for different reasons.
Yeah.
But they're still fucking gas masks. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And it's like, well, we were going to have them use a pickaxe, and then that movie started up, so they called us and said, if you use a pickaxe, we're going to break your leg. So we had a pitchfork instead. Like one of those kind of deals. I'm not sure, because the pitchfork was a really cool tool to use, but being in the Prowler look he had was very militant.
Yeah.
I was assuming it'd be more like bayonets and things like that. The pitchfork was a little bit more Friday the 13th-y, you know.
Yeah, that's true. I was kind of expecting that. I mean, if they were going for the whole World War II thing, should have been like bayonets and maybe like an M1 rifle or
with some barbed wire.
Yeah, or like even like a landmine or something like that. I mean, he does pull out a gun at the end of the film, but at that, even then, it's like a shotgun instead of like a M1 or something like that.
It's not like it's like a Ruger or some kind of hammer.
Yeah.
That
oh man, yeah, a fucking Ruger or something would have been like perfect. Like that would have been.
Yeah, because that would have really fit in his outfit and everything, the style of the gun and things. Film at the end when they have the final like roughhousing segment where he's after the girl. At first, I was like, "Oh, so the dad just turns around with a shotgun and blows him away? That's it?" You know, I'm like, "Oh, that was anticlimactic." Then it actually gets going. Obviously, the spooky "I'm actually not dead," and they started wrestling around, and in actually kind of a way. Little white panty in there, having a good time. I like, of course, the woman grows a set and starts fighting back. You know what I mean? That was pretty interesting. And
yeah, she reminds me of who's it? Amy Steele from Friday the 13th Part 2, I think.
Yeah, she reminds me. I don't know how to describe it because it's just that kind of shy, slender blonde kind of a look. That I wouldn't say Texas Chainsaw or anything like that. More like that. It's hard
she's like the good girl. Like she's the kind of girl you might meet in a library or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not a party girl. Let's put it that way. She's not.
No, and that's that follows the thing. If you do sex, drugs, anything like that, you will die, and that's good.
Although she totally wants to bone the deputy sheriff, like for the whole movie, though.
Finally, at the end, the movie definitely goes out with a bang. And
that's such a great effect.
It's a great effect, and Tom Savini again. If you want to watch a film with a decent plot line, okay acting, proper acting, and great effects, you watch The Prowler.
Yeah.
And you'll be just as pissed as I was that you didn't see it already. That's one of those things. And it's the film company's problem that we didn't see this film. So
it was the producer who didn't want to take money to have another company distribute his film. He says, "No, fuck it. We're not going to take your $750,000 of our $1 million budget. We're not going to accept that. We're going to try to distribute it ourselves." And that's why the movie went into obscurity and made no money.
Right. So epic fail. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I mean, if this film would have got a proper production value, Laserdisc releases and stuff like that, because I've never seen a Laserdisc release of it. Blue Underground did another beautiful release, like they do pretty much everything they do. Their Blue Underground has always been one of the tops for me for DVD releases.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky 13 did a Slaughterhouse. I'm not sure if Lucky 13 did the Prowler either, but they usually do okay. Not as good as Blue Underground. now we have new ones like Scream Factory and whatnot.
Yeah, they're the new. They're actually, I'd say Scream Factory is essentially the new Blue Underground at this point.
And I think they did Maniac Scream, but I don't think they did the Prowler yet. Actually, someone's doing someone just did. Now look for it if you guys want to. Blu-ray, a special Blu-ray edition with a documentary and everything about the making of Madman. Yeah, so definitely check that one out if you're curious. Madman is a film that if you like genres of horror, you're really into horror and the camp kind of, spooky bullshit like that, you're gonna like it.
Yeah.
Both of these are not bad movies.
Yeah, I don't hate Madman or anything. Like, I like it. I feel like it doesn't quite work as well as like a lot of the films of the same type. And I definitely enjoy the Prowler quite a bit. Like I'm watching the Prowler and I'm thinking, this is just as good, if not better, than like the first Friday the 13th. I mean, it deserves the same status as Friday the 13th, as far as I'm concerned. So.
And I think the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either on par or slightly better. I would actually take the Prowler, especially over like Part 2, Friday the 13th 2. I would take probably the Prowler over that. I don't know if it's meeting Betsy Palmer and stuff like that, but like I had to go back and rewatch Friday the 13th Part 1, and it has a nice feel to it. Definitely the Prowler is something that if you like the styles of the Friday the 13th film, you'll love the Prowler.
All right, Paul, if you'd like to tell the listeners where they can find you on the internets.
Okay, well, you can find me at PA Brew News, which is 3 words on Facebook, 1 word on YouTube, PA Brew News, and for beer reviews and very random movie updates. I try to do now if I get the time to do it. And if you want to hear some really bad metal, go to YouTube at Funeral Dust 666.
Right on, and. Okay, thank you, Paul, for joining in, and thank you, everyone, for listening. You'll hear all the particulars of where you can find us and stuff at the end of this. And, excuse me, we're going to go out with Madman Mars theme song.
Lord of the campfire, telling all the horror. Great film. Great song. Yeah. Apparently there's a metal version out you mentioned.
Yeah, there is there's a metal version I saw on YouTube. There's a couple covers. I think you just have to write in Madman 1982 theme song cover, and I think it'll come up. So,
and I know we were talking before that the film that's a really great film for that song, even though it's a little hokey at times. I like the fake harpsichord kind of sound it has.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there is not the a cappella version plus.
Yeah, which has like all the verses of the song. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
He's real. Lord of the campfire, telling of his horror, lost in the woods with the madman and the stars. Don't laugh at the tales, heed if you call him the legend lives. Beware the madman Mars. The legend lives. Beware the madman Mars.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For our other episodes, links to Daniel, Paul, and Lee's other stuff, and links to some great podcasts of similar interest, visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. There you can leave us comments on the site or directly email us. We listen and respond to everything. Thank you. Drive through.